Okay, afternoon everyone. Hope everyone had a nice lunch. My name's John Wallworth. I'm the Information Security Lead for HCRG Care Group, formerly known as Virgin Care. Health and social care provider in the UK. With me is Jason. Jason's our business and solutions manager, and this session, I should say, is to help us look at how we define a security strategy. And Jason's here because he's the other side of the security world. He's that agile side. He's the agile yin to my compliance yang. And it's how do we not butt heads? How do we work together to actually achieve some really difficult projects that we've had in healthcare over the last 2 years, which has been, in all honesty, the busiest I've ever been in my working life, to deliver solutions that are really important to meet the business needs whilst maintaining the level of compliance we need to protect all of our health records. So it's been quite difficult, and understanding what that's done and how we can drive a strategy that supports that continuing speed and development is really key to success in the world of digital health, because the transformation that's going on is totally wide across the whole environment. So one of the first things that we talked about was from a COVID point of view, and like I say, Jason's here from the business side. How did you find the change from pre-COVID into the COVID response, and what was it like from your side, the speed requirements that were delivered to us?
Oh, absolutely hectic. As most people probably had, we went from 0 to 1,000 miles per hour when COVID came out. Everyone's plans, programs, and that had to be put on pause for now enabling a remote workforce. We just went from having only a few select users working remotely to virtually all of our users, about 5,000 users, virtually overnight working from home. Luckily, we had solutions out there in the pipeline that were being developed and actually were rolled out, but not in as full a state as it probably wanted to be. And we just had to ramp that up. And then overnight, the infrastructure team pulled out the bag, and we ended up having to roll out in a really short period of time. But at the moment, things just haven't slowed down for us.
That's it. And the strategy we had pre-COVID was we were working within the confines of the health service, and we were going to align with what the health service was doing in this digitisation and digital services. So we were going to work on digital applications and healthcare applications, working across multiple providers, and all of these ideas were there, and they were a really good plan, and then real life happens, the way it does, and totally undermines the strategy and forced us to rewrite and really think long and hard about, was our strategy working for us? Did our security strategy and how we were going to meet all of the requirements we had to in a waterfall style, was that ever going to work with an almost agile, high-speed environment? And the answer from a security point of view was no. It absolutely wasn't. One of the big challenges I remember was a phone call I got one morning from Jason that he needed me on an urgent call because the board had laid off all the PAs and they'd outsourced it to an offshore solution, and they needed it up and running now. Go. It was like, wow, okay, so that was total blindside from them because there was people recruitment issues there and everything that was a major challenge. But that sort of thinking and planning we couldn't have ever thought about. So there was a solution there, and Jason solved that problem and worked with me so we can actually understand and define what we've done. And what I've tried to do is help Jason by giving him frameworks and a service-based thinking. So by aligning a security strategy to a service-based thinking, what I mean by there is, and we've heard this in a few sessions today, and anyone who's done ITIL training will totally get this, people don't want quarter-inch drills, they want quarter-inch holes. They care about the outcome. And everybody's the same. The same applies to security. What's the outcome? The journey that you have to go through, and we all have to go through in our day-to-day lives, is almost irrelevant. What they want is a secure solution that's delivered to your estate. Security, is it secure? Yes or no? Most people outside of our world won't understand that. They just want that yes from you to say that that's done. So how can you work with your strategy to define that sort of thing? And the speed of which you've got to work adds extra challenge to that as well. So how do you find that framework model has worked for you in some of the things you've done?
It's been a challenge. Situations where we'll go back to what you sort of spoke about early on about this PA situation. I had a phone call 4 p.m. on a Thursday from the recruitment team saying I've got 4 PAs starting on Monday. They were external to the business. They were working in Glasgow. It's not something we've done before. They need to be able to log into the platform and work from Monday morning straight away. So literally the first thing I had to do, phone you up. So I phoned John up and said, look, we need to start this ball rolling. And the first thing I said to you was, right, what tip list do I need to get it past you first? Most of the time we have a good strategy with the healthcare services. We've got the DSPT, Digital Security Protection Toolkit, which gives us a good understanding of what frameworks we need to fit IT within, what legislations and rules we need to follow. But there's often certain things outside of that we also have to consider. And this sometimes where it's really handy having John on the end of the phone and actually going, have you thought about X and Y? And actually from a security point of view, I can go back to it and go, actually, no, we haven't thought about this. Or, okay, we thought about this, but actually it might be a bit over too complicated or X, Y, and Z. And that's why, the framework, especially in our industry, there's a fixed framework, but there's also the muddying areas around the outside that kind of has to try and fit in at times.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've aligned our strategy to look at data. So not IT assets or anything like that, because the IT assets are generally recycled equipment. So that could be servers in our server estate. And we know that we're doing all of the compliance actions we need to do for that. So we can minimize the compliance overheads by utilizing the assets that are already in our business. But by thinking about data as a flow, then we know what segments we need to think about. So if we were talking about producing publicly available information on quitting smoking, then I am far less concerned about that as a security risk. If we're talking about the transfer of information about our health records, then I've got a different set of requirements. And by using the framework model and setting a strategy that aligns to that service-based or outcome-based solution, and using existing assets where possible, supported by the framework of requirements that's generally already met, we're reducing the overheads that the IT team have to face day to day. We're reducing the problems and the challenges they face, because much like users, IT will find a way around when they need to, because they are getting the pressure from the business that they've got to deliver this. They need to deliver it now. They can't wait for the information governance. They can't wait for the compliance piece. They can't wait for security. Your strategy needs to support them at that speed, because I'm pretty sure everyone in this room has proved to the business beyond all doubt that you can deliver at speed now. So now the next question is, 6 months from now, do you think it's going to go back to how it was 2 years ago? No, they're always going to look at you and say, well, you've done it when everyone was working from home. Now, why can't you do it now? So is your strategy ready for it? How do you stop and think about that strategy piece? And like I say, outcomes, that's what people think about, is what is the outcome? They want to see that there's a secure solution in place. That's the end goal. To the likes of us, that means there's 1,000,001 things we might have to do, and we have to work with a wide range of teams. But if you've catalogued it and you've actually got those assets already understood, then all of a sudden the component building becomes really simple and easy for IT, so they can actually roll out solutions really quick, really simple, quite easily, with very light touch from security. It becomes a check and a balance to make sure that the right things are done, and then we'll do some testing on it. It could be some app testing, it could be some vulnerability scanning, it could be a full-on pen test, it could be a physical test. It all depends on what we do, because we understand the assets and we understand the service. And that's how we've aligned our security strategy to actually deliver that and support the transformation that we've seen in healthcare from there. Now, the strategy for IT and the strategy for security also tend to be very different things. IT strategy is more often than not save money, reduce costs, reduce overheads, do more with less. And then security are sat there going, right, okay, well, I want these tools, I want that, and I'm spending this and I'm spending that, and you're a cost. And you're bringing nothing to the table until it's too late. When there's a breach, that's when you get your money. Until there's a breach, you're doing a brilliant job, so why do you need more money? You haven't had a breach. Everything's working perfectly. Why do you need more? We haven't had one. That's fair defence. It's going to come from any CFO that you speak to. Every single one of them will say that. And then they'll work with IT and go, well, everything seems to be working. Your uptimes are high. You don't need redundant servers. We haven't had any downtime. What if? That's our world. So we have to think about how does that strategy support that? So the way we've worked on that is we work incredibly closely together. He is the agile yin to my compliance yang, if you will. It works well, so we balance each other out, and that close relationship is utterly key. Having that working relationship within security with the wider teams and really talking to the people that actually use the platforms and understand it, that's where the value of your strategy, of your users will feed into your strategy to help you understand where are you going to be 3 years from now. Because IT strategy is probably going to change in 6 months' time. But my strategy, do I need to readdress mine every time? I haven't got the time for that. Too small of a team. So we drive the security strategy on that outcome-based focus of we will deliver secure solutions in a scalable fashion using existing assets where possible, delivered by a framework model. That allows us to, like I say, if you're using an existing server that's already patched, it's already up to date, it's scanned weekly, it's pen tested monthly, all of those things are in place, and you're just using it as a data store, why do you need to do more? It's simple, it's easy, compliance comes out.
We also have a really fun, sort of tricky situation where all of our ideas and wacky things we want to try and do comes with the budget. The budget comes from patient care for us. All of our money comes from contracts and that we work with within the NHS. And actually a lot of the time is we need to achieve these certain outcomes. And what John was saying there about reusing assets is one of the sort of key things we've had to do to ensure that we can keep efficiently working with patient services, as well as delivering effective IT, effective security standards, but also means that when we come to it, working with John and going through, okay, we need to reuse this server, it's not just going to host this system, it needs to host this, this and this, working through making sure there's no compatibility issues, not going to cause any new security flaws, is it need to be moved into the DMZ, is this going to be internal, is it going to be on our HSCN? Lots of these sort of questions then come out and they start having to build this whole data map that we have to work with and understand where the data's flowing. At the moment, we have a situation, because we've got so many home workers, not many people can probably put a hand on their heart and know exactly where all your data is everywhere. And to be honest, it's going to be very hard to do that. There are platforms out there which we've looked at to support this, but they all come at a cost. The way we've worked on it, we've worked by virtualizing desktops, so we know where the data is. It doesn't leave the file server, it doesn't leave the network. But we still have laptops and assets out there that could still leak data and everything as well. And this is another thing that we try and bring into the strategy, is to ensure that things like that are those closed loopholes.
Yeah. So, you know, our strategy there cannot change. The delivery strategy for the business is always going to be deliver an outstanding patient care. That setting changes. The service becomes, it could be a dermatology service, it could be a child service, anything becomes almost irrelevant, really. It's the outcome as to what we care about, is that user can get to that medical system or to that information as and when they need it in a fashion that works for them. Subtitle, securely. So that strategy that we've developed in security to support IT, to make their journey as easy as possible on their compliance piece, makes or removes the barriers that more often or not we see people facing and why people avoid us. But we don't want to be avoided. People do naturally, because they see us as the department of no, NO, rather than the department of KNOW, which is what we should be. We need to know what's going on so we can protect it. You know, Jason will tell you, I'm the world's biggest fan of an asset database, the CMDB. You've got to be. If you don't know what you've got, what are you protecting? How are you protecting it? You haven't got a clue. Same applies to your data as well, though. So that's where we've took our strategy and aligned that to a data model so we understand the flow of data across technology. The technology is almost irrelevant. It could be an Azure system, it could be an on-prem 2003 server that's relied for a line of business application. It's almost irrelevant. What if there's a variation We manage that variation, and then Jason would come to me and say, actually, we've got to use this because of this, 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 or this. So an old version of Citrix that we looked at, we're using one. We've got to use it. We cannot get away from it. We can only deliver this clinical app using an old, unsupported item. So we knew that I was going to come to him because he's got the framework, and I was going to want to see that it was in a segmented section of the network. He knew that I was going to demand to see that it was device access controlled. I was going to do all of this. And he had all of that information to hand before I came to him. So he knew what was required. And that really pays off in the working relationships that we have, because the delivery speed can be maintained. He's got the information he needs to work with. I know that that information's there because I'm keeping it up to date. That means my strategy can be aligned to more of an outcome-based model to support the business in their outcomes that they want to achieve, if that makes sense. Or am I talking too much ITIL there? If I am, tell me. But I'm a big ITIL fan.
So there has been episodes where we've not agreed, shall we say, on the strategy moving forwards within security. We've had situations where we've had a vulnerability management system that was scanning the network, monitoring things. It was really good. However, it was killing the server estate. It was causing real problems with making sure people logging into the service, or the server engineers, people with low latency were logging in. So we had to literally go into the sand and say, look, you love this platform, you think it's your new child, but I'm literally going to take it away from you in some ways. And we had to sort of come up with a new way of working with possibly a new provider, and actually all these sort of different things, reconfigured the whole thing from the ground up, just to ensure we met your requirements. It was a tricky month or so of pain. It
was. So our strategy was to make it all secure. So the question is, how can we reduce the overheads from day-to-day staff? There's a question we all face. So we looked at automation, and we got a tool in, and it worked. And security-wise, a little bit of a barrier now. I was over the moon. I was getting everything I needed to know and 1,000,000 times more. I was so happy. From an operational side, I'm impacting the operation. At which point, no, security cannot be an impact on the system. It's got to be as invisible as possible to be successful. So that's when we had to go out, literally full RFP, out to market, multi-vendors coming back with answers, everything like that. 2 months turnaround, full RFP for a vulnerability management solution. Because we've got our frameworks, because we've got that strategy of we know what data we've got, we know where our assets are, we know what we can do, we were able to turn that full RFP around. Purchase has gone in, the server estate is being spun up. Well, it would be if we weren't here. But that's how quick and easy we're able to turn something like that and replace the entire vulnerability management platform for a 5,000 user estate distributed across the whole of England. That simple change to outcome-based rather than I'm going to work with the old way of thinking is probably I'm going to move everything to an Azure platform, and I'm going to work with an identity management provider, and I'm going to do this, and that's going to be your strategy for the next 5 years. And then something comes along and someone buys out your business and changes everything that you've got to plan for. By working with, we will deliver secure outcomes, and changing that methodology and that way of thinking and working with your customers, you can really make a difference to them, and they will engage more with you, at which point you've won. You've absolutely won. The second you've got the engagement, you're there. You've got what you need because you're kept in the dark. And it's when you're kept in the dark that you face those problems. Before I joined, the information security piece was a subsection of IT, wasn't it?
Was indeed.
And it moved over into governance, risk and compliance, which was a challenge. There was ownership issues, accountability issues, like who's got what, why are we here, why are we there? And it required a full rewrite of how the two teams work together now. We've got that nailed and it works really, really well. Hopefully, there's some takeaways to make people think about this one. To go, well, what can I do about my strategy? How can I get my people to want to engage with security more and earlier? help them, give them. It sounds basic, but start off with a simple checklist. You know, one of my first actions was as we were rolling out 365 at a rate of 1 million miles an hour, because it was literally, you've got a week. Get Teams up and running in a week for all these users, go. So I sat down with the project manager. I was like, right, okay, here's my list of requirements that I need to see from 365. I need to be doing this. Did I get everything done? No. No, I didn't.
Are we still fixing it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But we got to a level of acceptance, and that's the key. So by working with that, just a simple checklist of what do you need to see from that platform? What do you need to see from that solution? Get that in place, put that out, and let people see it. Advertise it to everyone, and let them know that it's there. They'll read it, they'll have a look at it, and they'll go, I can work with this. This isn't a problem, I can do this. All of a sudden, your acceptance becomes easier. You're making your own change approvals that much simpler. Rather than walking into the change board and then getting blindsided on a Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock with, oh, and by the way, we've brought this segment of the network in and we're sending this sort of data over it. What? You're already aware, and you've got that feed coming into you straight away, so you've got that awareness. It can really make a difference.
Yeah. So one thing that's really benefited John and myself recently, really, is actually a bit of part of the change of business company for us. Our C-suite has had a bit of a shake-up. Some of them are sort of more awake than probably they've heard before, and they're actually dealing with risk differently. So actually our new owner, our new sort of reporting manager understands risk very differently to one of our managers we had, say, 6 months ago. And actually that's made the appetite for going through security a lot better. We're under a legal environment now, so actually a lawyer now looks after an IT section, which is really weird. However, it works really well because actually he understands risk in a completely different way than actually a normal, our previous setup was. And that meant that when we actually started saying, look, this needs to happen because of X, Y, and Z, and it's not compliant because of this, he understood that risk and actually was much more accepting into it, rather than always just looking at the pound signs of how much it's going to implement. He was actually more aware of actually the damage that could happen if it's not being implemented as well, which has helped some of our business cases considerably.
And that's it. And those business cases using that outcome-based model are actually really simple and quick to draw up. We can sit there and draw up an entire business case in half a day if we have to, and we've had to in the past. Because we know we've got the framework in place, we know we're recycling or reusing assets and spare capacity where we need to. 1, we keep costs down. 2, we know all our assets already. 3, we're already compliant, so we don't have to increase the scope and scale of our security tools. So we're trying to minimize the impact as much as possible by reusing what we've already got where we can. If that kind of makes sense. I know that sounds cheap. Kind of is. I'll accept that. We're on public money. A private company on public money, so we don't get any of the benefits of F licenses from Microsoft or anything like that. We have to pay full commercial rates, which is a bone of contention.
Yeah, we don't talk about that at work with John because he has to go to his little quiet room and sort of shout for a while, don't you?
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we are with that one. And I would like to now open the floor up to any questions that anyone has.
So in terms of your models, which I think, great credit to what you guys have achieved. Absolutely brilliant, on signing budgets and actually turning it around in a pandemic. I think that can only be lauded. In terms of your data, you talk about your IT strategy, you talk about your security strategy, and your data's in a single silo. How do you maintain that fit for purpose with your data in terms of its governance and its relevance as an asset to support future growth of your business?
So an interesting one is, because we are healthcare, information governance are very prominent. And I know not every business has that. But in healthcare, they are front and center for everything. So it's reasonably simple for us. The rules are set by somebody else. We have to follow those rules. And we make sure that we have got segments of our network for certain classifications of data. So if it's corporate data, that can sit on our on-prem services. If it's healthcare data, that's probably going to sit on HSCN, which is an entirely separate segment of our network. So by using the classification of data and the records of processing activity and DPIAs that the IG team do, that keeps us aware of what we've got, what we're doing with it, and where it's going. By having the classifications, we know where it's stored, and then having those classifications defined to a set of assets, we know what we need to use. So when a new service comes along, we can also say, what sort of data is it? Okay, right, so we're going to need to highlight that section, and we're going to need that. And okay, IG, can we get a DPI in a roper that says this, this, this? Right, okay, and then we piece it together like a jigsaw. So the information isn't really used to grow the business, and it's a little bit strange like that, because there is no growth. It's a health service provision.
Okay, let me slightly change the question from growth to delivering additional and better services.
Okay.
Which is a slightly different nuance on the data.
Absolutely. So an interesting one would be what you're going to do with the reduction we've had in our IT team, and how you're going to use a few tools that we've got there to sort of simplify that. It's a good example.
So one thing that we've started looking at, or not even looked at, we've actually become a centre of excellence right now, is RPA processing. We found that a lot of information like data, also the daily actions being done by the IT teams, John's team and everything else as well, replacing it with a robotic worker meant that actually we're getting much higher quality data being put back into the systems. So for example, some of the data we have can be multi-labeled. It's depending on what the content is. Children's data is an absolute nightmare because it can be labeled left, right and centre and have 1,000 different tags on it. Some of it now needs to be kept indefinitely at the moment until they can make up their mind until how long it needs to last for. But these bots are going through that sort of stuff, not only using the tools that are built within Office 365, the AIP system, but it also double checks that and just goes through and goes, right, okay, what's it doing? Also, when it comes to sort of removing access for people, they're using the bots to actually then make sure that our starters, movers, leavers are all done through that process to remove any issues. So every system is checked, every bit of data access is always controlled, all through a automated process, which has saved many hours of work. And also any loss and breach of data as well.
Yeah, so the other side of that is we can scale, and when we do win a new contract, we don't get that 6-month notice and 6-month grace window to take it on. You get 30 days from introduction to full go live with uniforms, staff, 2B, everything. And that can be challenging. So by using that compartmentalized model and using those existing pieces, so our 365 estate, we've got 73 retention labels that we have to have. Yeah, I know.
That's retention labels, that's not classification.
Yeah, that's just retention.
137 classifications or something like that.
Yeah, it's healthcare for you. It's wonderful. But by using that compartmentalized model and then driving automation through from other tools from the business, because we've got that asset that's already secured, we know that we can spin that up very, very quickly. We can do an import straight into our HR system. Our HR system will automatically update to AD, which will then use the RPAs to automatically create the user IDs and fire them out using existing tools that we are already signed off with, which means service take-on and service exits are actually a hell of a lot simpler for us now. And what used to take 30 days of very hard effort from a lot of people can be done in a lot less time with a lot less people. And that wasn't an active decision we chose to make. That was a decision that was forced upon us, and we've responded to and developed ourselves.
Anything else?
You talked about outcomes
Yeah.
before, and I was just trying to work out the context of what you meant by outcomes. So are you thinking about the outcomes that the business needs to apply and then setting a security criteria or setting requirements to the outcome?
Yeah, so it's multiple layered, that answer. So yes, there's the overall answer is, at the end of the day, what does the business expect from me as the information security lead? And that's a secure estate. That's what they expect me to deliver. That's the outcome they expect of me, to deliver the best security I can and highlight where I can't and highlight the risks. And that's what they expect. So I then need to look at what's the outcome of each system that we're dealing with. So I might look at a system we call Lily, which is a children's healthcare service. So from that, I need to make sure that the outcome is that that's there, it's available, it's backed up to the nth degree, it's encrypted to the nth degree, multiplied by the nth degree that it's backed up by. And all of those, that's the outcome that we need. And then it's labeled with this and it's labeled with that, and that data shall never be deleted ever. All of those sorts of things. So it's taken each one as a service and breaking it down. So the overall outcome for security is this. That's my goal. And my objectives then translate into my different work streams. And then I break that down to each service that we provide from there. So email, you know, their goals and their outcomes are uptime and availability. I want to make sure that I've got TLS in place. I want to make sure I've got MTA, STS working. I've got my SPF, my DMARC, my DKIMs, all of those in place. I want to make sure that my backups are working. I want to make sure that my 7-year retention's in place, that my off-site, off-network segregated backups of those backups are working. So I look at those outcomes and break it down as to...
And you put that into a framework, do you? And it's almost a tick list every time you get a new business.
That's it. And when it's using assets that were already approved in our asset database, so as Jason's designing a service, he'll look at what do I need to build this? So I'm going to need some servers, right? Okay, I can use some service capacity from there. Okay, that's already approved in our asset list, so that's brilliant. I don't need to lift my head on that one. I've got this sort of data. Can that data work on that asset? Yes. Right, brilliant. And then all of a sudden there's less overheads for him, and it makes his job easier, which in turn makes my job so much easier. I've got a happy Jason, and that's a fantastic place to be. I then get a better service solution delivered to me, and I can sign that off. Really simple, really easy. The business are happy because we're operating at high speed, and we're maintaining that COVID-style response permanently without really taking any hit on compliance and governance that you've had to when we first started with COVID.
And have you got like a technology that underpins that? So you talked about like classification of technology, so a server is assured to do this job, and then there's requirements that you have coming through, and you need to map those requirements to
Yeah, so one thing we've been building for quite a while, and we're still on its road path to it, is quite an extensive digital catalogue. Inside there, we've got what we've known is good in the past. We've worked on all the things we've achieved, the way we've achieved it. We document that solution, so that way then we never go back to redo something twice. So if we've got a setup as it is, like John was saying on for Lily, we know Lily can be deployed in this method, and we've got a service that needs it. We can then literally just copy and paste and move it over there. It's never having to redesign it from the ground up. It just means that we've got approved processes that are already in our archive that we can just pick up and move. Which saves us a lot of time having to sort of rethink around. Sometimes we have to think outside the box and go, right, okay, we've still got these new reporting lines to do, but most of the time it is quite useful to have that sort of guidance around. Working with the IT team and the security team to understand, getting that built well, and actually can also be delivered to the business, so they don't also go out looking for different products that you've already got in the estate. Like we have problems all the time with the dictaphone solutions. Like we've got voice recording that doctors love to do all the time. I've lost count how many different services have thought that we haven't got one of these, and they've went out and gone for a full tender, and we've gone, actually we've got a corporately provided one over here. Has no one told you? Oh no, we didn't know about that. So that's what gave us an idea of putting this whole catalogue together, and it is publicly accessible to all of us or our senior staff who get involved with that level. Junior staff just ask too many questions, but the senior ones definitely, you need to know about that stuff.
Harsh. Yeah, fair. So if we're all done with the questions, thank you for putting up with us. Thank you for listening. We are around if anyone wants to corner us, punch us or anything like that. Always welcomed. Thank you very much for your time.